Nebraska Extension forage and crop residue specialist Daren Redfearn says for grass hay producers, only two management practices can be completely controlled: fertility and plant maturity. We talked with Daren recently about how those issues play into quality and output. We started by asking about trying to find the best time for harvesting hay.
So the optimum time for harvesting grass hay is relatively simple if you key in on one particular stage of grass growth. And that stage of grass growth is going to be somewhere in the boot stage, just prior to seed head emergence, or just immediately after those seed heads have emerged from the boot.
And why is that the optimum time?
So again, that's a pretty simple answer to a lot of physiological reasons why that happens. But the reason for harvesting at that particular stage of growth is right at that boot stage or early heading, especially when we're talking about a lot of our grass hays. Yield at that point is not going to increase appreciably following that time frame. However, if we look at our forage quality is actually going to drop very rapidly after the seed heads emerge.
So how much does the nutritive value change?
You know, that's a little bit hard question to answer there. Some of that's going to depend on the species. For example, a lot of our small grains, it'll drop very rapidly. Crude protein may decrease 1% per day. TDN may be as high as 2% per day. If we look at a lot of our cool season forages, especially the smooth brome grass like we have over here in the eastern part of Nebraska, it may take 2 or 3 days to note those same changes. So the perennials tend to change quite a bit slower than the annuals.
What's the impact of fertilizer?
So the impact of fertilizer, basically what we rely on fertilization to do, not necessarily improve the quality as much as the yield. So nitrogen fertilization is going to increase yield quite dramatically. From a forage quality standpoint, nitrogen fertilizer is going to increase our crude protein. However, as we've talked about a little bit earlier, once those grasses reach that boot to early heading stage, that crude protein is going to go ahead and drop. So actually what you could have, if harvest is delayed quite a bit, you'll have a large yield of low quality hay.
Is forage analysis necessary?
Forage analysis, I would recommend forage analysis as being a necessary component from two standpoints. Number one, if you're feeding that hay, you're going to need to know what the protein and TDN is going to be in that hay. The reason is because if it's low, you're going to need to supplement it so that you don't impact animal performance. If it's not low and it meets the needs of the animal, there's no need to supplement additional protein and energy. So look at it as a cost savings.
So any hay that might have been cut across Nebraska recently and suffered a rain event, how important or noteworthy or critical is that?
Yeah, so the rain's always a tricky part. That's the things that we've talked about prior to the maturity and the fertilization. Those are the two factors that you can control during the haymaking process. You know, the weather is one uncontrollable factor, and it doesn't make any difference what part of the country you're from. I ran into this same things when I was in the southern part of the U.S. But the rain, hay that's harvested and rained on pretty quickly, at least to me, doesn't seem like it's damaged or you lose as much as it does hay that's been harvested and is about ready to bale. At that point, you have to go back in, you have to start handling that, tedding it and getting it busted back out in the windrow so that it can dry. And the more times that you handle that hay, the more losses that you have. And these losses are primarily associated with the leaves, which have all the energy and the protein in them anyway.